Thank you very much. I wanted to thank the organizers of this wonderful conference for inviting me to tell you my story and the story of Piano Pronto today. I read a lot of books about these TED Talks before I did this, and they all dubbed these talks as the talk of your life, and I thought, gosh, that is so much pressure. What on earth am I going to talk about? And the more I thought about how my business has developed over the last couple of years, I've discovered that one of my happy habits is the fact that I live every day like it's the talk of my life. Every interaction I have with a customer, every conversation that I have, everything is done with intent and about being impeccable to my word and to my vision. And I truly believe that success, no matter what business you're in, if you're a teacher, if you're a writer, if you're a publisher, if you're a basket weaver, it's all about consistency. So today I would like to share with you my story, because I know that there are many of you out there who are probably having lots of little kernels of ideas in your heads. Maybe you've already started implementing one of your ideas. Maybe you're a little stuck. And I'm hoping that my story will inspire you to take that next step. And my success with my publishing business has really been about cultivating a couple particular niches. So we're going to explore the word niche and the letters of that word and hopefully provide you with some inspiration. I want to encourage you that once you find your niche, whatever it is, that you don't dabble in your niche. I want you to strive to be extraordinary in your niche. My path in life was chosen quite early. This is me at age 3. I did 2 things as an only child. I played store and I played teacher. And I had a class full of stuffed rabbits who were my captive audience for many, many years. And I had an undeniable passion and energy for both teaching and for retail. And I used to systematically take all of the canned goods out of the kitchen to stock my inventory in my room. And when I was 8 years old and my father bought me a real cash register from the local swap meet, I was really legit at that point. So my career paths decided very early on. Planning and implementation were my strong suits from the beginning, so I really truly believe that I was destined to be doing exactly what I'm doing today. A couple of my early influencers in life, my dad was a big, big part of influencing my decisions. He's an engineer by trade, and he's a guider. He's not a teacher, he's a guider. Nothing is ever done with my dad without a lot of questions, a lot of why not? How do we do that? Still to this day, if I have something broken in my house, he comes over and he looks at me, says, okay, how are we gonna fix that? He was never about giving me the answers. He was always about guiding me towards the answers and asking those all-important questions. We used to have our weekly board meetings at the park, and he was very proud to brag to all of his friends that his little squirt daughter at age 3 could, rattle off the molecular weight of helium and his ham radio call signal. We are still very close. My primary piano teacher, Thelma, who's pictured here on the left, she was to me the ideal teacher. She had an awesome respect for tradition, the classical tradition and the classical canon. We explored it in depth. She was also a realist, and she realized that she needed to be able to do a lot of things as a musician in order to make a living, and she really instilled that value in me. She was the first person to tell me that I should be teaching for real. She approached me when I was 14 and said, Jen, it's time for you to start teaching. And I said, you're crazy. I was not ready to ask, why not? But she was a wonderful mentor to me, and I started teaching, and it was just a very natural transition. Suddenly, those stuffed bunnies were talking to me and actually, listening to me. This is my first little student, pictured up to the right here. He came every day after school for lessons, because I won't say lessons were cheap, but they were highly affordable. So his mom wanted it to be like school for him. He came on a regular basis. This kid got really good really fast with 5 days a week in lessons. He's married with kids and a lawyer now, so this is quite a while ago. Thelma also, she knew her limits. I think this is a really important thing about honing a niche in your career. When I told her I really wanted to learn to play jazz, she said, hey, that's above my pay grade. You're gonna need to go elsewhere for that. And she pushed me towards starting to take classes at the local community college while I was still in high school, so that I could get that type of training. And it was really at this point that I sort of started to butt heads with academia a little bit. I realized that I could not have my feet on both sides of the fence. I had a classical teacher, and I still loved classical music and wanted to pursue that, who said, well, you can't play jazz. You can't do both. And it was at this point that I started to ask, well, why not? Oh, well, thank you. That was unexpected, but thank you. N is for now or never. Piano Pronto is a love story. Do we all love love stories? We all love love stories. I met a Swedish guy when I was in these jazz bands. He made eyes at me from the upper rows in the big band. He was a trumpet player. He was my first husband, and we had a wonderful relationship. We spent a couple years in California, and then we were faced with a now or never decision. He had to move back to Stockholm to pursue his degree in engineering, and I believe in signs and fate, and I said, hey, I'm going to apply to the conservatory in Stockholm. Extremely hard to get into that school. They take 2 people per instrument per year. I said, if by chance I manage to get into that school, I am meant to go, and I got in. I still remember the message on my message machine in broken Swedish that, congratulations, you've been accepted. And I thought, wow, now I really have to do it. I was 1 year shy of my bachelor's degree. I dropped all 30 of my students, gave them to another teacher, put all my stuff in storage, and moved halfway around the world. And that was the year that I grew up. I missed teaching terribly. I also realized that year that I was not destined to be in a performance-based career. It's just not where my heart was. So, as much as I enjoyed my semester at the conservatory, I decided it was time to put that chapter to a close, and I went out and got a job. And I got hired at an international preschool in Stockholm, teaching kindergarten. And eventually they wanted me to implement a piano lesson program as soon as they found out about my music background. It was a really interesting school because all of these kids spoke multiple languages. They would often divide their sentences up into multiple languages. And the only common language that we had between us was music. And at this point, when I needed to start teaching these kids, I had no access to the materials that I was used to using back home. And there was one sheet music store in Stockholm, and it was not stocked well at all. So I bought a copy of Sibelius notation software, and that's where Piano Pronto started. I started creating materials to fit the needs of these kids at the preschool. I is for inspire, innovate, and ignite. That year in Sweden was very important to me, learning a new language, starting to hone the methodology around how I approached teaching music reading to kids was what that year in Sweden was about. I came back to the US in 2001, and I was inspired again. And I got most of my students back, I finished my bachelor's degree, and I spent the next 7 years writing a method book series. Who does that, right? And by the end of it, I was tired. I was really tired. And it was this huge task that I had undertaken. I'd been road testing the materials on my own students for all of these years, keeping what worked, tossing what didn't. And I was really proud of the results. So I'd gotten to the end of writing the series, and by this time, Eric was back in the United States. We were married at this point. We took a walk one evening, and he was so much like my dad. He was always asking me the right questions. He said, well, we need a name for all of this. We need a name for these books. We need a name for the business and what you're doing. He said, so what is the point of what you're doing? What is the point of your teaching style? And I said, well, I fervently believe in striking while the iron's hot. In the honeymoon period, when you first get a student, that in any way we can, we want to get them ignited and inspired and excited about learning music and pursuing music and going the distance. And I said, well, and I really like alliteration. So what word describes that? And Pronto. So we came up with Piano Pronto, all on an evening walk. I still feel like I owe him royalty payments for that because he really guided me through that decision. C is for critics are critical. I love a pat on the back, who doesn't? But it won't lead to success. My critics are so important to me. And I've had a couple who are really, really important. When I got done writing the first edition of the books, I was tired, I couldn't even think about marketing, and so I took the easy route, and I shopped the books around to major publishers. I got the same response back from all of them. This is very comprehensive, this is great. There's just no room for another method book. Okay, and I took that as the final answer. That was the gavel coming down, and that was the end of it. And at that point, I wasn't asking, well, why not? Why is there not room for more? So I set the books aside and I went back to graduate school. I was kind of itching to get back into academia, so I went back and did a degree in musicology, even started a PhD in musicology. But after a year into that, I discovered that academia and I needed to part ways at that point, and I was really itching to get back into publishing. And if I was going to give this a run, I was going to give it a really, really good run. At that point, Eric and I were going through a divorce after 12 years together. This is the sad part of the love story. But it was a good thing, too, because I had been very reliant on him for helping me build my business, my website, whatnot. This was an era where my mindset changed. As I was honing my voice as a teacher and figuring out where I excelled, I was also starting to ask, well, why is there not room for more of us in the field? And if somebody before me has done this, then I can do it too. I just need to ask the right questions and start figuring it out. And I decided that I finally was ready to put myself out there. I had started marketing a bit. I was gaining some online presence in all of our lovely Facebook forums, and people were starting to know who I was, and I was blogging and whatnot. So when I walked into MTNA 2013 in Anaheim, which was my first conference as a publisher, I will admit I was overconfident. And I still remember the feeling of, I made the foolish assumption that a lot of entrepreneurs do, that if I put my signpost out there, they will come. And I remember standing there and having that feeling in the pit of my stomach as all the publishers made their rounds. And I was neighbored to Joy Tunes, who had just released their beta version of Piano Maestro. And I remember all the publishers spent like 45 minutes at their booth, and I kept thinking, okay, good, I'm next. And then they just walked past. And I was like, oh, well, why? And I was too close to it. I was too close to it emotionally. And so post-MTNA, I had a very important meeting with Tom Polenta from Yamaha, who I believe is in the room. And every time I see him, I thank him for this meeting, because it was a pivotal tipping point moment in the development of my business. He was the first critic who was critical. He was critical to the development of my business. He looked at what I had, he looked at my business cards, he looked at my website, and he said, Jen, I'm going to be honest, this is in the bottom 10% quality-wise of everything that's out there. If you want to survive, everything needs to change. And I was stunned. I went home, I probably cried for a couple hours. And then when the fog cleared, I realized, oh, he's totally right. And that was really the igniter that I needed. And that really catapulted me forward. From that point forward, I started building a team around me. I needed to find people who believed in my vision, and my vision as a teacher, and as a publisher, and as a writer. And so that's what I spent the next few years doing, was honing my voice, really figuring out who I was. And this is a two-pronged niche that I wanted to have. Number one, I wanted to destroy the stigma that's surrounded with the idea of self-publishing. I really wanted to be a trailblazer and change the publishing landscape. We are all so quickly connected now with the internet. We have our virtual water coolers on Facebook where we're conversing on a daily basis. With the digital era, everything is available like that. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to add transparency in an industry where there isn't a lot of transparency. The second part of my niche was about what made me successful as a teacher. I was most successful teaching pop music to my students. I mostly had happy hobbyists who just wanted to play stuff that was cool and relevant. I was frustrated after years of trying to license pop music to arrange and sell. And I finally decided that I wanted to make my niche all about writing pop-style music with pedagogical purpose. And that is really the niche that is Piano Pronto. So a year ago, I took the plunge and I decided that it was finally time to stop running my teaching business. And I had a good friend and customer who said, Jen, you know, laser beams, they can only focus on one thing at a time. And you can't keep doing both things. So I took the plunge. I retired from teaching after 20 years in the industry. And I decided to devote myself whole hog to publishing. And it was amazing because there was an amazing turning point in the business. We catapulted. And I think it was that my customer base, they needed to know that I was 125% dedicated to this all the time. And part of that landscape that I wanted to change is I wanted to change the customer experience. For me, Piano Pronto is about building community. People ask me all the time if I miss teaching, and I say no, because I didn't ever really leave teaching. I'm still teaching. I network with my teachers on a daily basis. I am very involved with my customers and their students, and I love that. It fills my tank, and I'm still a teacher. E is for energy and excitement are contagious. People want to feel like they are part of something, and I think that is a big part of the success behind Piano Pronto, is that teachers do feel supported. Their students also feel supported. Students are very excited to hear, oh, this composer is living and breathing. Oh, she'll sign my book for me too. Oh, she'll Skype into our recital and say hello. You know, these are all things that go above and beyond. These are things, if you have a niche, this is part of being extraordinary in a niche, just taking things to the next level. This is one of my favorite pictures, totally candid, of a little girl who had opened a book that she got in the mail that had been personalized. I mean, this kind of stuff, right, I don't miss teaching because I still have wonderful, wonderful stuff like this on a daily basis. It truly is a blessing. I love the picture on the left because I feel like right. We are constantly saying it's sports versus piano, sports versus piano. And this teacher wrote to me, she says, my little student, he got a new saddle, but he also got his new Piano Pronto book that day, and he couldn't decide. So we just flipped the bench around, and he got to do both at the same time. His posture's still pretty good. You know, it leaves a little to be desired. But this stuff just warms my heart. I don't work a day in my life. I work incredibly hard, but this is such a labor of love, and I absolutely love what I'm doing. So I want to challenge you today. You're all inspired people. You are at this wonderful conference that is incredibly inspiring. You are all innovative people. You are all here to make sure that our industry keeps moving forward. I will admit, I can be a bit of a pessimist. I worry about our industry at times because of the division that exists within it, between the very traditional path and what I call the rest of us. I think in order for us to survive, I think everyone needs to realize that we are all part of the same pie. I have never sought to subtract from that pie. I am always seeking to add to the collective whole. One thing I think about a lot is, are we teaching in a way that is cultivating an interest in music that not only will make our students lifelong supporters of the arts, but will inspire them to take over our job? Are we teaching in a way that they will want to inherit our position and say, you know what, I'd like to teach piano too? That's what Thelma was for me, and that's what I aspired to be for my students. And my favorite quote, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Did I hear a Go Pack Go out there? There it was. If you're sitting on an idea, get off the fence and just go for it. Thank you.